Elena fled an abusive past for the solitude of Ashfield Farm, but she never expected a broken stallion and an even more guarded man to help her rediscover trust, strength, and love. Until her past comes looking. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The old pickup truck rattled down the dusty country road as Elena Reyes gripped the steering wheel tightly. At 26, she felt much older, worn down by years of cutting remarks and constant criticism. The bruise on her wrist had faded, but the memory of Jake's fingers digging into her skin remained fresh. "You'll be back," he had sneered as she packed her few belongings. "You've got nowhere to go. Nobody wants damaged goods." Eleanor pushed the memory away and focused on the road ahead. The handwritten directions from the post office job listing led her through rolling green hills dotted with farmhouses until she saw the wooden sign, Ashfield Farm. As she pulled into the gravel driveway, she took a deep breath. This was her chance to start over. Just work, a place to sleep, and most importantly, space to breathe. A tall man with broad shoulders emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. His face was tanned from working outdoors, and his dark hair was slightly too long, as if haircuts were an afterthought. He didn't smile as she approached. "You must be Elena," he said, his voice deep and steady. "I'm Levi Hart, owner of Ashfield." "Yes, that's me," Elena replied, trying to sound confident despite her nerves. "I'm here about the seasonal helper position." Levi nodded, his expression unreadable. "Got your message. Timing's good. We're short-handed with spring planting and the new foals." He showed her to a small cabin at the edge of the property. It was simple, just one room with a bed, small kitchenette, and bathroom. But to Elena it looked like paradise. No one watching her every move, no one telling her she was taking up too much space. "It's not much," Levi said, misreading her. "Silence for disappointment." "It's perfect," Elena said quickly. "Really, thank you." For a moment something flickered in Levi's dark eyes. Surprise, perhaps, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Breakfast is at 5:30 in the main house. I'll introduce you to the others then." With that, he turned and walked away, his strides long and purposeful. The next morning, Elena met the other workers. Mike, the weathered foreman who'd been at Ashfield longer than Levi had owned it. Sarah, the cheerful cook who ran the main house. And Carlos and Luis, brothers who handled most of the field work. "Levi doesn't talk much," Sarah explained as she poured Elena coffee. "Don't take it personal. Been that way since his brother died." "His brother?" Elena asked before she could stop herself. Sarah nodded, lowering her voice. "Riding accident 5 years back, right after Levi bought this place. They were so close, those two. After it happened, Levi just closed up." Mike assigned Elena to help with the horses, and she spent her first day learning the layout of the stables, the feeding schedule, and how to muck out stalls. By afternoon, her muscles ached, but it was a good kind of pain, honest work that left no room for dwelling on the past. As the sun began to set, Elena decided to explore the property before dinner. She followed a path that led to a distant pasture, enjoying the peaceful quiet after years of Jake's constant noise, his TV shows, his friends, his demands for attention. That's when she saw him, a magnificent black stallion with a white blaze. Down his face, pacing nervously along the fence line of a separate paddock. Unlike the other horses she'd worked with that day, this one seemed wild, untamed, his dark eyes flashing with what looked like defiance. Elena found herself walking closer, drawn to the horse's restless energy. "I wouldn't get too close if I were you." She turned to find Carlos watching her from a few yards away. "That's Storm," he explained. "Boss's special project. Nobody handles him except Levi, and even he has trouble sometimes. That horse has thrown every rider who's tried to break him." "What's his story?" Eleanor asked, her eyes returning to the stallion. Carlos shrugged. "Levi found him half dead 2 years ago. Some rich guy's failed racehorse. Been wild since the day he arrived. Levi won't give up on him, though." After Carlos left, Eleanor stayed by the fence. She didn't approach, just sat down in the grass and watched as Storm continued his restless pacing. Something about his wariness spoke to her. She understood what it meant to be always on guard, always waiting for the next blow to fall. The next day, after finishing her assigned tasks, Elena returned to Storm's paddock. This time she brought an apple, sliced into pieces. She didn't try to feed him, just placed a few slices on the fence post and then sat down in the grass, not looking directly at him. For nearly an hour, Storm ignored both her and the apple. Then slowly he approached the fence, nostrils flaring as he caught the scent. He snatched a piece quickly, then retreated, watching her warily. Elena didn't move. She just sat quietly, letting him set the pace. When she returned the next day, Storm was waiting by the fence. This time she held out an apple piece in her palm. After several tense moments, he stretched his neck toward her, his soft muzzle tickling her palm as he took the offering. "Well, I'll be damned." The voice startled her. She turned to find Levi standing a few yards away, his expression a mixture of surprise and something else she couldn't read. "He doesn't let anyone near," Levi said, walking closer but stopping at a distance that wouldn't spook the horse. "How long have you been coming here?" "Just 3 days," Elena answered, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "I hope that's okay." Levi studied her for a long moment. "He only lets you get close," he finally said. Then, after a pause that seemed to stretch between them like a tangible thing, he added quietly, "My heart works the same way." The words hung in the air, surprising them both. Levi looked away first, clearing his throat. "Dinner's ready. Sarah sent me to find you." As they walked back toward the main house, Elena felt Levi watching her from the corner of his eye. "You're good with him," he said after a while. "Storm, I mean. He senses fear, uses it against you. But you're not afraid." Elena thought about this. Maybe I understand him. Sometimes being afraid for too long makes you look fearless. Levi glanced at her sharply, and she immediately regretted her words. She'd said too much. "Sorry," she murmured. "I should mind my own business." "No," Levi said quickly. "Don't apologize. It's been a while since anyone's spoken to me that directly." Over the next few weeks, Elena fell into the rhythm of farm life. She woke before dawn, worked alongside the others, and spent her free time with Storm. Gradually, the stallion allowed her to stroke his neck, to stand beside him without tension. She noticed things about Levi, too. How he always checked each animal personally before retiring for the night. How his hands, rough from work, became gentle when tending to a new foal. How he spoke little but listened intently, his dark eyes missing nothing. One evening, Elena returned to her cabin to find a small wooden bench placed outside her door. It was simple but beautifully crafted, the wood sanded smooth and sealed against the weather. "Did you make this?" she asked Levi the next morning when she found him, alone in the stable. He nodded, not looking up from the bridle he was repairing. "Noticed you like sitting outside at night. Thought you might want something more comfortable than the steps." "Thank you," she said, surprised by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "It's nothing," he replied, but she caught the slight flush on his neck. That night, as Elena sat on her new bench watching the stars appear one by one, Sarah brought her a mug of tea. "He made that bench from scratch, you know," the older woman said, settling beside her. "Been working on it in the evenings." Elena wrapped her hands around the warm mug. He didn't have to do that. "Levi doesn't do anything he doesn't want to." "Do," Sarah said with a knowing smile. "That's something you should understand about him." The next day, Elena was surprised when Levi asked her to help exercise some of the horses. "Storm's getting used to you," he explained as they walked to the stable. "Might be good for him to see you with the others. Show him there's nothing to fear." As Elena saddled a gentle mare named Daisy, she noticed Levi watching her technique carefully. "You've ridden before," he observed. Elena nodded. "My grandfather had a small ranch. Nothing like this, but I grew up around horses." "You never mentioned that when you applied," she shrugged. "You didn't ask." A ghost of a smile touched Levi's lips. "No, I guess I didn't." They rode side by side through the pastures, checking fences and moving a few cattle to fresh grazing areas. Elena couldn't help noticing how at ease Levi seemed on horseback, his body moving in perfect harmony with his mount. "Your brother," she said hesitantly. "Did he love riding too?" Levi stiffened slightly, and Elena immediately regretted the question. But after a moment, he nodded. "Jamie was fearless," he said quietly. "Too fearless, sometimes." They rode in silence, for a while before Levi spoke again. "It was my fault," he said, his voice tight. "I knew the horse was too green, too spirited, but Jamie insisted he could handle it." "You couldn't have known what would happen," Elena said gently. Levi's jaw tightened. "I was the older brother. I was supposed to protect him." The pain in his voice was so raw, so familiar to Elena, that she felt an answering ache in her own chest. She knew what it was to carry guilt like a stone. That evening, a summer storm rolled in, bringing thunder that rattled the windows of Elena's cabin. Unable to sleep, she pulled on a jacket and stepped outside to watch the lightning illuminate the sky in brilliant flashes. Through the rain, she noticed the stable door swinging open. Concerned for the horses, she hurried across the yard, her boots splashing through puddles. Inside, the horses were restless, nickering nervously at each crack of thunder. Elena moved down the row of stalls, speaking softly to each animal. When she reached the tack room at the back, she was startled to find Levi sitting on the floor, his back against the wall, a framed photograph in his hands. He looked up and, in the dim light, she could see the wet tracks on his cheeks. "I'm sorry," she said, backing away. "I saw the door open and it's okay," Levi said, his voice rough. He didn't try to hide the tears or the photograph. "Jamie loved storms. I used to drag me outside to watch them when we were kids." Elena hesitated, then slowly sat down beside him. He turned the photo so she could see. Two young men, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning widely at the camera. The family resemblance was unmistakable. "He had your smile," she said softly. Levi looked at her in surprise. "I don't smile much these days." "But when you do," Elena said, "it's the same." They sat together in comfortable silence, listening to the rain pound on the roof and the occasional rumble of thunder. For the first time in years, Elena felt a sense of peace in another person's presence. "You're running from something," Levi said suddenly, his voice gentle. "I won't ask what, but I want you to know. You're safe here, Elena." The simple words, "You're safe here," brought tears to her eyes. How long had it been since she'd felt safe anywhere? "Thank you," she whispered. The next morning dawned clear and fresh after the storm. Elena arrived at the stables to find Levi waiting with two saddled horses. "I thought we could ride out to the north pasture," he said. "Check for storm damage." As they rode side by side, Elena felt something shifting between them, a tentative trust taking root. When they stopped to rest the horses by a small stream, Levi surprised her by asking about her life before Ashfield. "Not much to tell," she said carefully. "I needed a change." Levi studied her face. "Sometimes a change is just a new beginning. Sometimes it's an escape." Elena looked away. "Maybe a bit of both." "Whoever he is," Levi said quietly, "he was a fool to let you go." "He didn't let me go," Elena said, before she could stop herself. "I left in the middle of the night with whatever I could fit in my car." The admission hung between them. Levi didn't press for details, but his jaw tightened. "If he ever comes looking for you," he said simply, "he'll have to go through me first." The protectiveness in his voice made something flutter in Elena's chest. Not fear, but a feeling she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Days passed, then weeks. June turned to July, and the farm flourished under the summer sun. Elena's work with Storm progressed until she could lead him around the paddock with a halter, his initial nervousness replaced by a cautious trust. One evening, as she brushed Storm's glossy coat, Levi appeared at the paddock gate. "I have something to show you," he said, a rare smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He led her to a part of the property she hadn't explored, a small, tree-lined pond glimmering in the last light of day. "It's beautiful," Elena breathed, taking in the peaceful scene. "This was Jamie's favorite spot," Levi said, his voice soft with memory. "I haven't brought anyone here since—" He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Elena understood what it meant that he was sharing this place with her. They sat on the grassy bank, watching dragonflies skim across the water's surface. Without thinking, Elena leaned her head against Levi's shoulder. She felt him tense momentarily, then relax, his arm coming around her in a gentle embrace. "I think I'm falling in love with this place," she admitted quietly. Just the place. Levi asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elena turned to look at him, finding his face inches from hers, his dark eyes searching her own. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and brushed his lips against hers. A kiss so gentle it was almost a question. When they parted, Elena felt as though something long frozen inside her had begun to thaw. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," Levi said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "After Jamie died, I shut everything down. It was easier not to feel." "I know," Elena said. "After Jake—" She stopped, realizing she'd said his name aloud for the first time since arriving at Ashfield. "You don't have to tell me," Levi assured her. But suddenly Elena wanted him to know. Not everything, she wasn't ready for that, but something. "He wasn't a good man," she said simply. "It took me too long to see it, and longer still to leave." Levi nodded, his expression serious. "Thank you for trusting me with that." As they walked back to the farm, hand in hand, Elena felt lighter than she had in years. The weight of her past seemed less crushing with Levi beside her. That night, she slept deeply for the first time since arriving at Ashfield, without the nightmares that had plagued her for months. But peace never lasts. The next morning, Elena was in the stable when Mike called her to the main house. "Phone call for you," he said, his expression worried. "Guy says it's urgent." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. No one had this number, no one except— "Hello," she said, her voice barely steady as she took the receiver. "Did you really think I wouldn't find you?" Jake's voice, so smooth and reasonable, to anyone else listening, sent ice through her veins. She knew the cold fury that lay beneath that calm tone. "How did you get this number?" she asked, gripping the phone tightly. "You're not that hard to track, Elena. Small-town gossip, a few questions in the right places." He paused. "I'm coming to get you. We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," Elena said, struggling to keep her voice from shaking. "It's over, Jake." His laugh was soft, menacing. "It's over when I say it's over. And I'm not done with you yet." The line went dead. Elena stood frozen, the receiver still pressed to her ear. The fragile sense of security she'd built at Ashfield crumbled like sand. Jake had found her. He was coming. She had to leave. Now, before he arrived. Before he could hurt anyone else in his determination to control her. Before Levi tried to protect her and got himself hurt, or worse. With shaking hands, she replaced the receiver and turned to find Sarah watching her with concern. "Bad news?" the older woman asked gently. Elena forced a smile. "Just an old problem I need to deal with, nothing to worry about." But as she walked back to her cabin to pack her few belongings, Eleanor's mind raced with fear. She'd seen what Jake could do when he felt challenged or disrespected. The thought of him confronting Levi, of bringing his poison into this place that had become her sanctuary, was unbearable. Better to disappear again. Better to keep running than to watch everything she cared about be destroyed. With tears blurring her vision, Elena stuffed clothes into her duffel bag. The thought of leaving without saying goodbye to Storm, to Levi, it tore at her heart. But a clean break would be safer for everyone. As the sun began to set, Eleanor shouldered her bag and took one last look around the cabin that had been her home these past months. Then, with determination in every step, she headed toward the stable, to say a final goodbye to Storm before slipping away into the night. But as she approached the barn, her heart sank. Levi stood waiting by the door, his face set in grim lines, his hands clenched at his sides. "Going somewhere?" he asked, his voice tight with emotion. Before she could answer, the sound of tires on gravel made them both turn. A sleek black car was pulling into the drive, its headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. Jake had arrived. Eleanor felt her body go cold as the car door opened. Jake stepped out, looking exactly as she remembered, handsome in that polished way that had once impressed her, his designer clothes a stark contrast to the dusty farmyard. His smile, directed at her now, didn't reach his eyes. "There you are, sweetheart," he called, his voice carrying across the yard. "You've led me on quite a chase." Levi stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Eleanor. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone deceptively calm. Jake's eyes flicked to Levi, dismissing him with a glance before returning to Elena. "I'm here for my fiancé. We had a little misunderstanding, that's all." "Ex-fiancé," Elena corrected, finding her voice. "And it wasn't a misunderstanding." Jake's smile tightened. "Elena, don't air our dirty laundry in front of strangers. Let's talk privately." He reached out his hand to her. Elena shrank back, and Levi's stance shifted subtly, blocking Jake's path to her. "The lady doesn't want to talk to you," Levi said, his voice low and dangerous. "I think you should leave." Jake's expression hardened. "And who exactly are you to tell me what to do?" "Levi Hart. I own this farm." He crossed his arms. "And Elena works for me." "Is that all she does?" Jake asked with a nasty smirk. "Work for you?" Elena saw Levi's shoulders tense, his hands curling into fists. "Jake, please," she said, trying to defuse the situation before it escalated. "It's over between us. I've moved on with my life." "Moved on?" Jake laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "To what? Playing farmer with this hick?" He gestured dismissively at Levi. "You think he knows you like I do? You think he'd still want you if he knew all the things you've done?" "That's enough," Levi said, taking a step forward. "Levi, don't," Elena pleaded, grabbing his arm. "He's just trying to provoke you." Jake's eyes narrowed, tracking the movement of her hand on Levi's arm. "I see how it is. I came all this way to work things out, and you've already jumped into bed with the first guy who showed you attention." "You need to leave," Levi said, his voice steady despite the anger Elena could feel radiating from him. "Now." "Not without Elena," Jake insisted, his charm falling away completely, revealing the cold, controlling man she knew too well. "She's coming home with me where she belongs." "This is her home now," Levi said simply. "And she's not going anywhere. She doesn't want to go." For a moment, no one moved. Then Jake reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "Fine," he said, his voice suddenly calm again, the dangerous calm Elena had learned to fear. "If that's how you want to play, it. But first, Elena, don't you think your new boyfriend deserves to know who he's defending?" He turned the phone screen toward them. On it was a police report with Elena's name clearly visible at the top. "Did she tell you she was arrested?" Jake asked Levi, his voice dripping with false concern. "Assault with a deadly weapon, that's a felony, you know." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "Jake, please don't do this." "What's he talking about, Elena?" Levi asked, his eyes never leaving Jake's face. Before she could answer, Jake continued. "She attacked me with a kitchen knife. Completely unprovoked. I didn't press charges. I told the police she needed help, not jail. That's how much I loved." "Her?" He put a hand over his heart in a gesture of sincerity that made Elena want to scream. "That's not what happened," she said, her voice shaking. "Tell him the truth, Jake." "I have the police report right here," Jake said, waving the phone. "Facts don't lie, sweetheart." Levi turned to look at Elena, his expression unreadable. "Elena?" She took a deep breath. "I did have a knife, but it wasn't to hurt him. It was to keep him away from me." "She was having one of her episodes," Jake said, addressing Levi as if they were two reasonable men discussing a troublesome child. "The doctors said it was a breakdown. That's why I've been so worried. She needs professional help, medication." "Stop it," Elena cried. "Stop twisting everything." Jake's expression softened into practiced concern. "See what I mean? She gets like this, emotional, unpredictable." Levi was silent for a long moment, his gaze moving between Jake and Elena. Then, to Elena's surprise, he smiled, a cold, dangerous smile that transformed his usually gentle face. "I think I understand exactly what's happening here," he said quietly. He turned to Elena. "Would you go check on Storm for me? He gets nervous around strangers." "But," Elena began. "Please," Levi said, his eyes gentle when they met hers. "I'd like to have a word with your ex, man to man." Something in his tone reassured her. She nodded and started toward the paddock, glancing back once to see the two men facing each other in the fading light. As soon as Elena was out of earshot, Levi's expression hardened. "Let me be very clear," he said, his voice low. "I don't know what really happened between you two, but I know an abuser when I see one." Jake's practiced smile faltered. "Excuse me?" The way she flinches at sudden movements, the nightmares, the fear in her eyes when she heard your voice on the phone. Levi stepped closer. I've spent the last 3 months watching Elena heal from whatever you did to her, and I'll die before I let you hurt her again. Jake's facade of civility dropped completely. You don't know anything about her. She's unstable, manipulative. Ask her about the money she stole from me before she ran. I don't need to, Levi said simply. I trust her, Jake laughed. You're a fool. She'll do the same to you. Use you, then leave when something better comes along. If that's what she chooses, that'll be her right, Levi replied. But she's not going anywhere with you tonight. Jake's expression turned ugly. You can't stop me from talking to her. Actually, I can. Levi pulled out his own phone. This is private property. You're trespassing. I'm calling the sheriff unless you get in your car and leave in the next 30 seconds. This isn't over, Jake warned, his voice cold. For your sake, it better be, Levi said. Because if you come near her again, if you call, text, or try to contact her in any way, I'll get a restraining order. And if that doesn't work... He let the threat hang unfinished in the air between them. Jake glared at him for a long moment, then turned and stalked back to his car. Tell Elena I'll be at the Cedar Inn in town for a few days. When she's ready to hear the truth about her knight in shining armor, she knows where to find me. With that, he got into his car and drove away, gravel spraying from beneath his tires. Levi watched until the taillights disappeared down the driveway before heading to the paddock where Eleanor waited, her arms wrapped around herself as if she were cold despite the warm evening. He's gone, Levi said simply. Elena searched his face. Did he show you the police report? I didn't look at it, Levi told her. Whatever happened, I know there's more to the story than what he was saying. Tears filled Elena's eyes. He twisted everything, made it sound like I was crazy. Levi reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, he gently brushed a tear from her cheek. You don't have to explain anything to me, he said. Not until you're ready. But I want to, Eleanor said, her voice steadier now. I want you to know the truth. They walked to the pond, Jamie's pond, and sat on the bank as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. There, with the gentle sounds of the water lapping at the shore, Elena told Levi everything. Jake wasn't always cruel, she began. At first he was charming, attentive, made me feel special. But little by little, things changed. He'd get angry over small things. A dinner that wasn't perfect, a friend who called too late. He never hit me, not at first. It was more control, isolating me from friends and family, making me doubt myself. Levi listened silently, his jaw tight but his eyes never leaving her face. The night with the knife, Eleanor's voice faltered. He'd been drinking. I told him I wanted to leave, that it was over. He wouldn't let me go. He grabbed me, pushed me against the wall. Unconsciously, her hand went to her throat. I couldn't breathe. I managed to get away, ran to the kitchen. I grabbed a knife to keep him back, to scare him off so I could get out the door. But he called the police, Levi guessed. Elena nodded. Told them I'd attacked him for no reason. They believed him. Why wouldn't they? He's successful, respected. I was just nobody. You're not nobody, Levi said fiercely. You never were. The charges were dropped, Elena continued. But Jake used it to convince everyone I was unstable. He even had me committed for a 72-hour psychiatric hold. By the time I got out, he'd cleaned out our joint account, money I'd earned working. Double shifts for years. He said it was for my treatment. Levi's hands clenched into fists. I should have hit him when I had the chance. Despite everything, Elena smiled. Violence isn't the answer. Sometimes it's not the worst option either, Levi muttered. They sat in silence for a while, the night settling around them like a blanket. Thank you, Elena finally said, for believing me, for standing up to him. He threatened to come back, Levi warned her. Said he'd be staying in town for a few days. Elena nodded, not surprised. Jake doesn't give up easily, especially when his ego is bruised. You were planning to leave, Levi said, his voice carefully neutral. I saw your bag. I thought it would be safer, for everyone. Elena looked down at her hands. Jake can be dangerous when he doesn't get his way. Running didn't work before, Levi pointed out gently. What makes you think it would work now? I don't know, Elena admitted. But I couldn't bear it if he hurt you because of me. Levi reached for her hand, entwining his fingers with hers. I'm not afraid of him, and I don't want you to leave. He paused. Unless that's what you really want. Eleanor squeezed his hand. It's not. This place, it feels like home. Then stay, Levi said simply. We'll deal with Jake together. The next morning, Elena woke to the sound of voices outside her cabin. Peering through the curtains, she saw Levi talking with Sheriff Martinez, a middle-aged woman with a no-nonsense demeanor whom Elena had met at one of the town's summer festivals. When she stepped outside, both turned to look at her. Morning, Ms. Reyes, the sheriff greeted her. Mr. Hart here tells me you've had some trouble with an ex. Elena nodded, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. Yes, ma'am. I've had a word with a gentleman staying at the Cedar Inn, Sheriff Martinez continued. Made it clear that harassment won't be tolerated in my county. Thank you, Elena said, surprised and grateful. Mr. Hart also mentioned something about a police report from the city. The sheriff's eyes were kind but professional. If you'd like to set the record straight, my office is open Monday through Friday. After the sheriff left, Elena turned to Levi. You didn't have to do that. I know, he said, but I wanted to. Sheriff Martinez is good people. She'll help if Jake tries anything. Throughout the day, Eleanor kept expecting to see Jake's car coming up the drive or to hear his voice calling her name. But as hours passed with no sign of him, she began to relax a little. That evening, Levi surprised her by asking if she'd like to have dinner in town. Like a date, she asked, half teasing. Exactly like a date, he confirmed, a slight flush coloring his neck. If you want. Elena hesitated, thinking of Jake possibly still being in town. We can't hide forever, Levi said, reading her thoughts. And I'd like to take you somewhere nice, show you off a little. The idea of Levi wanting to show her off made Elena smile. Okay, but nowhere fancy. I didn't exactly pack evening wear when I left the city, Levi grinned. Trust me, you look beautiful in anything. 2 hours later, they were seated at a corner table in Rosie's, the nicest restaurant in the small town, near Ashfield. It wasn't fancy by city standards, but the food was good, and the atmosphere warm and welcoming. Elena wore her best jeans and a blue blouse she'd bought at the local shop with her first paycheck from the farm. Levi had cleaned up, nicely too, trading his work clothes for dark jeans and a button-down shirt that brought out the rich brown of his eyes. You look different, Elena commented as they studied their menus, almost like a city boy. Levi laughed. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to protect. It was the most relaxed Elena had seen him, his usual quiet intensity softened by genuine happiness. As they talked and shared a bottle of wine, she found herself thinking this must be what normal feels like. Having dinner with someone who respects you, who listens when you speak, who looks at you like you're something precious. They were halfway through their meal when Elena felt a prickle at the back of her neck, the sensation of being watched. Glancing toward the bar, she froze. Jake sat there, a drink in his hand, his eyes fixed on their table. Levi noticed her sudden tension. What is it? Jake, she whispered. At the bar. Levi turned slightly, his body language immediately protective. Do you want to leave? Elena considered it, then straightened her shoulders. No, I'm tired of running. She took a deliberate sip of her wine. Let him watch. I don't care. Levi smiled, pride evident in his expression. That's my girl. The simple phrase, my girl, sent a warm glow through Elena's chest. They finished their meal, trying to ignore Jake's presence, though Elena could feel his eyes on them throughout. When Levi reached across the table to take her hand, she saw Jake's face darken with anger. Ready to go? Levi asked when they'd finished dessert. Elena nodded, bracing herself for the possibility of a confrontation as they headed for the exit, which would take them past the bar. Sure enough, as they approached, Jake stepped into their path. Enjoying your evening? He asked, his voice slurring. Slightly from alcohol. We were, Levi replied coolly. Excuse us. Jake's eyes fixed on Elena. I remember when you used to dress up for me. Real clothes, not farm girl chic. Elena felt Levi tense beside her, but she squeezed his hand in warning. What I wear is none of your business anymore, Jake. Everything about you is my business, Jake hissed, dropping the pretense of civility. You think you can just walk away after everything I did for you? Several other patrons were starting to stare. The restaurant manager approached cautiously. Is there a problem here? He asked. No problem, Levi said firmly. We were just leaving. She's not going anywhere with you, Jake said, grabbing Elena's arm. The touch, so familiar, so unwelcome, sent a jolt of fear through her. But this time, instead of freezing, Elena reacted. Let go of me, she said clearly, loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. You don't have the right to touch me. Jake's grip tightened. Don't make a scene, Elena. I'm not the one making a scene, she replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. You are, and if you don't let go of me right now, I'm going to call Sheriff Martinez. For a moment, Jake's fingers dug deeper into her arm. Then abruptly he released her, taking a step back. This isn't over, he said, his voice low with fury. Yes, it is, Elena told him. Go home, Jake. There's nothing for you here. With that, she turned and walked out of the restaurant, Levi at her side, leaving Jake standing alone at the bar. In the car, Eleanor's hands shook as the adrenaline drained away. You were amazing in there, Levi said, reaching over to take her hand. I was terrified, she admitted. Being brave isn't about not being afraid, Levi said. It's about doing what needs to be done, despite the fear. When they returned to the farm, Levi walked Elena to her cabin door. Before he could say goodnight, she made a decision. Would you like to come in? She asked. Just to talk. I don't think I can sleep yet. Inside, they sat together on the small sofa. Elena tucked against Levi's side, his arm around her shoulders. Thank you for tonight, she said, for making me feel normal again. Levi pressed a kiss to the top of her head. You are normal, Elena. It's Jake who's messed up. Do you think he'll leave now? Go back to the city? Levi was quiet for a moment. I don't know. Men like that, they don't like to lose. Elena sighed. I'm sorry I brought all this trouble to your door. Hey, Levi said, tilting her face up to his. You have nothing to be sorry for, nothing. When he kissed her, it was gentle at first, then deeper as Elena responded, her hands coming up to frame his face. They fit together perfectly, as if they'd been made for each other. Later, as they lay together in the narrow bed, Levi's arms wrapped protectively around her, Elena felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Whatever Jake might do, she wasn't facing it alone anymore. The next morning, Elena woke to find Levi already up, making coffee in the small kitchenette. Morning, he said, smiling at her tousled appearance. Sleep okay? Better than I have in years, she admitted, accepting the mug he offered. They spent a lazy morning together, talking and laughing, stealing kisses between bites of the simple breakfast Levi prepared. It felt natural, as if they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. I should get back to the main house, Levi said eventually, though he made no move to leave. Check on things, Eleanor nodded. And I should see Storm. He'll be wondering where I've been. Levi's smile turned mischievous. Are you saying I have competition from a horse? Definitely, Elena teased. He's very handsome, and he doesn't hog the blankets. Levi laughed, pulling her close for one more kiss before reluctantly heading out. Elena spent the morning with Storm, continuing the gentle training that was slowly transforming the once wild stallion into a trusting partner. He now allowed her to put a halter on him and lead him around the paddock, though he still showed signs of nervousness if she moved too quickly or if strangers approached. You're doing so well, she murmured, stroking his sleek neck. Just like me learning to trust again. Around noon, she heard a car coming up the drive. Thinking it might be Sheriff Martinez with news about Jake, she headed toward the main house. But the car that pulled in wasn't the sheriff's patrol vehicle. It was Jake's black sedan. Elena froze, her heart pounding. Where was Levi? Mike? Anyone? Jake got out of the car, his expression unreadable. He'd changed from the rumpled clothes he'd worn at the restaurant into a crisp suit, his hair perfectly styled. He looked like the successful businessman she'd first fallen for, polished, confident, in control. "Hello, Elena," he said, his voice pleasant, as if their confrontation the night before had never happened. "I think it's time we talked. Really talked." Elena glanced toward the barn, hoping to see Levi or one of the other workers, but the farmyard was deserted, everyone out in the fields or tending to chores elsewhere on the property. "There's nothing to talk about," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Please leave." Jake sighed, shaking his head as if disappointed in a child. "Always so stubborn. It's what I loved about you, you know. Your spirit. If you loved anything about me, you wouldn't have hurt me," Elena said. "Hurt you?" Jake's expression shifted to wounded innocence. "I gave you everything. A beautiful home, nice clothes, trips to places most people only dream of seeing. And in return, you took my freedom, my self-respect, my friends." Jake waved, a dismissive hand. "Those people weren't really your friends. They were using you. The only person who used me was you," Elena said, finding strength in speaking her truth. "And I'm done with it. Done with you." Jake's facade cracked, anger flashing in his eyes. "Because of that farmer. What can he give you that I can't? Look at this place. It's nothing. You deserve better." "Levi gives me respect," Elena said simply, "and kindness, and love without conditions." "Love?" Jake laughed harshly. "You've known him, what, 3 months? That's not love, Elena. That's a rebound." "It's more real than anything I ever had with you," Elena replied. Jake's expression darkened. "I didn't want to do this, but you leave me no choice." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. "I'm suing you for the money you stole from our joint account before you left." Elena stared at him in disbelief. "What money? You emptied that account yourself." "That's not how the bank records show it," Jake said smoothly. "And as I'm sure your new boyfriend has told you, I'm quite respected in the community. My word against yours." Well, we both know how that turned out last time. Fear curled in Elena's stomach. Jake was cunning, connected. He could make her. Life hell with legal battles she couldn't afford to fight. "What do you want, Jake?" she asked tiredly. His smile was triumphant. "Come back to the city with me, just to talk. If you still want to stay in this place afterward, I won't stop you." Elena knew it was a lie. If she got into that car, Jake would make sure she never got out again, at least not as herself. He'd break her down until she was nothing but a shell, living by his rules, afraid of his moods. "No," she said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Jake's expression hardened. "Then I'll see you in court, and when I'm done, you'll be paying me back for years. Maybe your farmer can help with the payments. Though I doubt he has much to spare, judging by this place." He turned to go, then paused. "Oh, and Elena, tell Levi to watch his back. Country roads can be so dangerous. All sorts of accidents happen." The threat, casual as it was, sent ice through Elena's veins. This was the Jake she knew, the real Jake beneath the charming exterior, the man capable of anything to get what he wanted. As Jake's car disappeared down the driveway, Elena sank onto the porch steps, her legs suddenly unable to support her. That's where Levi found her an hour later, still sitting, staring into space. "Elena," he said, concern in his voice as he knelt before her. "What happened? You're white as a sheet." Slowly she told him about Jake's visit, the lawsuit threat, and finally the veiled threat against Levi himself. "He won't stop," she finished, her voice hollow. "Not until he gets what he wants, or until he destroys anything I care about." Levi's expression darkened, but his voice remained calm. "We'll call Sheriff Martinez, file a report about the threat." "It won't help," Elena said. He was careful, nothing direct. "Then we'll get a lawyer," Levi insisted. "Fight his lawsuit." "With what money?" Elena asked. "I barely had enough to get here when I left, and now—" She gestured helplessly. Levi took her hands in his. "I have some savings, not much, but enough to get started." "I can't let you do that," Elena protested. "This is my problem, not yours." "That's where you're wrong," Levi said firmly. "The moment I fell in love with you, your problems became mine." Elena stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she'd heard. "You love me?" Levi smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. "Of course I do. I thought that was obvious." "But we've only known each other a few months," Eleanor said, echoing Jake's words even as her heart leapt with joy. "Sometimes a few months is all it takes," Levi said simply. "When it's right, it's right." He pulled her into his arms, and for a moment, Eleanor let herself believe that everything would be okay. That together, they could face whatever Jake threw at them. But later that night, as Levi slept beside her, Eleanor lay awake, worry gnawing at her. Jake was ruthless when crossed. He had money, connections, and most importantly, no moral boundaries. He would use anything and hurt anyone to get what he wanted, and what he wanted was her, back under his control. The thought of Jake hurting Levi, of destroying the peaceful life he'd built at Ashfield after losing his brother, was unbearable. This was her fight, not his. Carefully, so as not to wake him, Eleanor slipped out of bed. She dressed quickly in the dark, then wrote a note with shaking hands. "Levi, I can't let Jake hurt you or the farm because of me. I need to deal with this on my own. Please don't follow me. I'll come back when it's safe. I promise. I love you too. Elena." She placed the note on the pillow where her head had been, then leaned down to press a gentle kiss to Levi's forehead. He stirred slightly but didn't wake. With tears burning her eyes, Eleanor grabbed her bag and slipped out of the cabin. She had to end this once and for all. She drove into town, the old pickup truck's headlights cutting through the darkness. The Cedar Inn was quiet at this late hour, only a few lights still burning in the windows. Jake answered his door on the third knock, his surprise at seeing her quickly replaced by a smug smile. "I knew you'd come around," he said, stepping back to let her in. Elena didn't move. "I'm not here to come back to you. I'm here to make a deal." Jake's eyebrow rose. "A deal?" "Drop the lawsuit," Elena said. "Leave Levi and Ashfield Farm alone." "And in return, yes?" Jake prompted when she hesitated. Elena took a deep breath. "In return, I'll give you what you really want. The chance to show everyone that you won, that you got me back." Jake's eyes narrowed. "Go on." "I'll come back to the city with you," Elena continued, each word feeling like a betrayal of herself, of Levi. "I'll attend one event, your mother's charity gala next month. I'll smile, be charming, act like we're working things out, let you save face with your friends and family, and then we're done. For good. You sign something saying you'll never contact me again, never threaten legal action, never come near me or anyone I care about." Jake studied her for a long moment. "One event won't be enough. People will talk if we break up right after." 3 events, Elena countered. "Over 1 month, that's my final offer." Jake's smile was slow, predatory. "Make it 3 months and you have a deal." Elena felt sick at the thought of 3 months in Jake's world, pretending, playing a role. But it would be worth it to protect Levi, to end this for good. "Fine," she agreed. 3 months. But I want something in writing. Tonight. Before I go anywhere with you." Jake laughed. "Still don't trust me? Smart girl." He gestured to the room behind him. "Come in. We'll draw something up." As Eleanor stepped past him into the hotel room, she felt a chill run down her spine. She was walking back into the lion's den, but this time, she told herself, she was doing it on her terms. This time she had something worth fighting for. Back at Ashfield Farm, Levi woke to an empty bed and a note that made his blood run cold. He read it once, twice, hardly believing what he was seeing. Elena was gone, and he knew exactly where she'd gone. Without hesitation, he dressed and grabbed his keys. There was no way he was letting her face Jake alone. Not now. Not ever. As he drove toward town, a storm began to gather on the horizon, thunder rumbling in the distance, a perfect mirror of the fear and determination warring in his heart. Rain began to fall as Levi's truck sped toward town, fat drops splattering against the windshield. The wipers squeaked rhythmically, matching the pounding of his heart. How could she do this? Go to Jake alone, thinking she was protecting him. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the empty road ahead. Levi gripped the steering wheel tighter. He should have seen this coming. Eleanor had spent years being told that her problems were hers alone to solve, that asking for help was weakness. Of course, she would try to handle Jake by herself, but not this time. This time, she wasn't alone. At the Cedar Inn, Levi parked haphazardly near the entrance, not caring that he took up 2 spaces. The night manager looked up in surprise as he burst through the door, dripping rainwater onto the worn carpet. "I need to know which room Jake Reynolds is in," Levi demanded. The manager frowned. "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't give out guest information." Levi leaned across the counter. "My girlfriend is with him. She's in danger." "Sir, I can't." "Call Sheriff Martinez then," Levi interrupted. "Tell her Levi Hart from Ashfield Farm needs her at the Cedar Inn, room number of Jake Reynolds." He pulled out his phone. "Or I can call her myself." The manager hesitated, then sighed. "Room 212. But if you cause any trouble..." Levi was already heading for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. He found room 212 at the end of the hallway. Hand pounded on the door without hesitation. "Elena," he called. "Elena, are you in there?" Inside the room, Elena froze at the sound of Levi's voice. She was sitting at a small desk, watching as Jake wrote out their agreement on hotel stationery. At the pounding on the door, Jake's head snapped up, his expression darkening. "Your farmer boyfriend has terrible timing," he said coldly. "Levi..." "Go away," Elena called, her voice shaking. "I'm handling this." "Open the door, Elena." Levi's voice was firm. "Whatever deal he's offering, it's not worth it." Jake stood, smoothing down his shirt with deliberate calm. "I'll handle this." "No," Elena said quickly, rising to her feet. "Let me talk to him. I'll make him understand." Jake studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fine, but make it quick. We have plans to finalize." Elena went to the door, opening it just enough to see Levi standing there, rain-soaked and wild-eyed with worry. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "Did you really think I wouldn't?" Levi asked, his voice gentler now that he could see she was unharmed. "Elena, whatever you're doing, stop, come home." "I can't," she said, glancing back into the room where Jake watched with arms crossed. "I'm doing this to protect you, to protect Ashfield. Jake will destroy everything if I don't." "Let him try," Levi said. "We'll face him together." "This isn't your fight," Eleanor insisted. "Yes, it is," Levi said firmly. "Because I love you. And that means your fights are my fights too." Behind her, Jake made a disgusted noise. "How touching. The farmer thinks he's a knight in shining armor." Levi's eyes hardened as he looked past Elena to Jake. "I'm no knight, just a man who knows what matters." "And what's that?" Jake asked mockingly. "Love? Honor? Those things don't pay lawyers, Hart. Those things don't protect you when someone with real power decides to crush you." "Maybe not," Levi agreed. "But they're worth fighting for anyway," Jake laughed. "Eleanor, tell your boyfriend what we're planning. Let's see how much he loves you then." Elena turned to Levi, her eyes pleading. "It's just for 3 months. I go back to the city with Jake, attend some events, make it look like we're reconciling. Then he drops everything, the lawsuit, the threats. We sign papers making it official." "And you believe him?" Levi asked incredulously. "After everything he's done?" "I'll have it in writing," Elena said, though even to her own ears the words sounded naive. "Paper doesn't stop men like him," Levi said. "Once you're back in the city, away from everyone who cares about you, what's to stop him from tearing up that agreement, from hurting you again?" Elena had no answer for that. Deep down she knew Levi was right. "You're not going with him," Levi said, his voice gentle but firm. "Not tonight, not ever." Jake stepped forward, his face hard. "She doesn't belong here playing farmer's wife. Elena needs the city, culture, society, things you can't give her. Elena needs to be free to choose her own life," Levi countered, "something you never allowed her." "I gave her everything," Jake snapped, his polished facade cracking. "A beautiful home, expensive clothes, the best of everything." "Everything except respect," Levi said quietly. "Everything except love without conditions." Jake's face flushed with anger. "You know nothing about us, nothing about her." He turned to Elena. "Tell him, Elena. Tell him how you used to love our life together. The parties, the travel, being envied by everyone we knew." Elena looked between the 2 men, Jake with his expensive suit and cold eyes, Levi with his rain-soaked clothes and steady gaze. In that moment, the choice seemed so clear she wondered how she'd ever been confused. "I was never happy," she said quietly. Not really. I just got very good at pretending. Jake's expression twisted with fury. You ungrateful! He lunged forward, grabbing Elena's arm with bruising force. Levi moved faster than Elena had ever seen him move, shoving Jake back with enough force to make him stumble against the desk. Don't touch her, Levi growled, positioning himself between Elena and Jake. Jake regained his balance, his eyes cold with rage. Big mistake, farm boy. He launched himself at Levi, his fist connecting with Levi's jaw in a blow that sent him staggering back. But Levi recovered quickly, years of hard physical labor giving him a strength Jake couldn't match. The two men grappled, knocking over a lamp that shattered on the floor. Elena backed away, terrified by the violence, but not knowing how to stop. Stop it, she cried. Both of you, stop! Neither man seemed to hear her. Jake landed another punch, splitting Levi's lip. Levi responded with a powerful blow to Jake's stomach that doubled him over. The door burst open, and Sheriff Martinez stood there, her hand on her holstered gun. That's enough, she commanded. Both of you, hands where I can see them. Now! The men separated, breathing hard. Blood trickled from Levi's split lip, and Jake's perfect suit was torn at the shoulder. She called you, Jake said accusingly, glaring at Elena. I didn't, Elena replied, confused. I did, came a voice from the hallway. The night manager peered in nervously. After he came in talking about his girlfriend being in danger, Sheriff Martinez surveyed the scene with practiced eyes. Anyone care to tell me what's going on here? This man forced his way into my room and attacked me, Jake said immediately, straightening his clothes. I want him arrested. That's not. What happened? Elena protested. Jake grabbed me first. Levi was protecting me. The sheriff turned to Levi. Is that true, Mr. Hart? Levi nodded, wiping blood from his lip. Yes, ma'am. He's lying, Jake insisted. Eleanor came here voluntarily to reconcile. We were having a private conversation when this person broke in and started making threats. Sheriff Martinez looked at Elena. Ms. Reyes, what's your version? Elena took a deep breath. I did come here voluntarily to make a deal with Jake. He's been threatening to sue me and to harm Levi and the farm. That's ridiculous, Jake scoffed. I'm a respected businessman. I don't make threats. Actually, the sheriff said, pulling out a small notebook, I've received reports about your behavior at Rosie's restaurant last night. Witnesses say you grabbed Ms. Reyes and made threatening comments. Jake's confident expression faltered. A misunderstanding. I'd had a few drinks. Elena and I have a complicated history. Not that complicated, Elena said, finding her voice, growing stronger. He abused me, physically and emotionally. When I left him, he emptied our joint account and had me committed to a psychiatric facility under false pretenses. Those are serious allegations, Sheriff Martinez said, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. Mr. Reynolds, do you have anything to say? Jake's face hardened. Elena has mental health issues. She's delusional, paranoid. Ask anyone back in the city. I was trying to help her. By threatening her, Levi asked. By grabbing her hard enough to leave bruises. I never, Jake began. Show her your arm, Elena, Levi said quietly. Elena pushed up her sleeve, revealing the darkening bruises where Jake had grabbed her minutes earlier. Sheriff Martinez's eyes narrowed. Mr. Reynolds, I think you need to come down to the station to answer some questions. This is absurd, Jake sputtered. Do you know who I am, who my family is? Doesn't matter to me if you're the president's son, the sheriff replied coolly. In my county, we don't tolerate men who put their hands on women. She turned to Elena. Would you be willing to file a formal complaint? Elena hesitated, years of conditioning making her instinctively fearful of standing up to Jake in an official capacity. You don't have to decide right now, Sheriff Martinez said gently, seeing her uncertainty. But I'd like you to come to the station tomorrow to give a statement about what happened here tonight. She'll be there, Levi promised, moving to Elena's side. Jake's eyes darted between them, calculating. This isn't over, he said, his voice low. A small-town sheriff and a formal complaint won't stop me. My lawyers will bury you both. Add that to the list of threats, Mr. Reynolds, Sheriff Martinez said dryly. Now I'd suggest you check out of this hotel and leave my county, tonight. You can't make me leave town, Jake argued. No, but I can make your stay very uncomfortable, the sheriff replied. Hourly check-ins, license plate runs, welfare checks at your hotel room. For your safety, of course. Jake glared at her, then at Elena and Levi. Fine, I'll go. But this isn't the end. He grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. You'll be hearing from my lawyers, Elena. Count on it. With that, he stormed out, shouldering past the sheriff, who watched him go with narrowed eyes. Are you two okay? She asked when he was gone. Elena nodded, though she was shaking. Thank you, Sheriff. Don't thank me yet, Sheriff Martinez warned. Men like that don't give up easily. And he's right about one thing. My jurisdiction only goes so far. What should we do? Levi asked, his arm protectively around Elena's shoulders. Come by the station tomorrow, the sheriff said. We'll talk options, restraining orders, documentation. In the meantime, she handed them each a business card. My personal cell is on the back. Any trouble, any at all you call, day or night. After. The sheriff left. Elena sagged against Levi, the adrenaline draining away and leaving her exhausted. Let's go home, Levi said softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. I'm sorry, Elena whispered as they walked to his truck. I thought I was protecting you. I know, Levi said, but that's not how this works, Elena. We protect each other. That's what love is. Love, Elena repeated, the word still new and precious between them. I do love you, Levi. I've never had someone willing to fight for me before. Well, get used to it, Levi said with a small smile. Because I'm not going anywhere. Back at Ashfield, the farm was quiet under the pre-dawn sky. The rain had stopped, leaving everything washed clean and glistening with droplets. Elena felt a similar cleansing within herself, as if confronting Jake had washed away some of the fear that had defined her for so long. They went to Levi's house rather than Elena's cabin, both of them needing the comfort of being together. As Levi made coffee, Elena noticed a framed photograph on the kitchen wall she hadn't seen before. A younger Levi and Jamie, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning widely. You put up Jamie's picture, she observed. Levi nodded, handing ear. Her a steaming mug. It felt right. Time to stop hiding from the memories. Because they hurt? Because they matter, Levi corrected gently. Jamie would have liked you. He always said I was too serious. Elena smiled, imagining the younger brother who had meant so much to Levi. Tell me about him. Not about how he died, about how he lived. They sat at the kitchen table as the sun rose, Levi sharing stories of growing up with Jamie. Their adventures, their fights, the dreams they'd shared of running a farm together someday. As he spoke, his face softened with love and grief intermingled, no longer trying to hide either. Emotion. After he died, Levi said, I tried to shut everything down, all the feelings. It seemed safer that way. I know that feeling, Elena said. After Jake, I didn't think I'd ever trust anyone again. Levi reached for her hand across the table. Look at us now. Look at us now, she echoed, squeezing his fingers. They went to the sheriff's station later that morning. Elena gave a detailed statement about Jake's behavior, both during their relationship and since she'd left. Each incident was recorded, each threat documented. Sheriff Martinez explained the process of obtaining a restraining order and helped Elena fill out the necessary paperwork. It'll take a few days to process, the sheriff warned. And honestly, if he goes back to the city, it may not help much. But it creates a paper trail, and if he violates it, there are consequences. What about his lawsuit threat? Levi asked. Empty talk, most likely, Sheriff Martinez said. But just in case, I have a friend who's a good lawyer in the city, specializes. In cases like this, I'll give you his number. As they left the station, Elena felt both drained and strangely empowered. For years, she'd lived in fear of Jake's anger, his control. Now she was fighting back with the law and with Levi at her side. What do you think he'll do? She asked as they drove back to the farm. Levi considered the question. If I had to guess, he'll try once more. Men like Jake don't give up after one defeat. Their ego won't let them. And then we'll deal with it. Together. The next few days passed in a strained calm. Elena jumped at every sound, expecting to see Jake's car coming up the driveway, but there was no sign of him. According to Sheriff Martinez, he had checked out of the Cedar Inn the night of their confrontation. and hadn't been seen in town since. Maybe he really did give up, Elena said hopefully, as she and Levi worked together in the stable. Maybe, Levi agreed, though he didn't sound convinced. But let's stay alert just in case. Elena nodded, turning her attention back to Storm. The stallion had made remarkable progress in the past months. He now accepted a saddle, though he still balked at having a bit in his mouth or a rider on his back. He's come so far, Levi commented, watching as Eleanor led Storm in a circle. Just like his trainer. Eleanor smiled. We're both works in progress. That evening, they sat on the porch of Levi's house, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Elena's head rested on Levi's shoulder, his arm around her waist. It was a moment of perfect peace. I've been thinking, Levi said after a while. Elena murmured, content and drowsy in his embrace. About us. About the future. Elena lifted her head to look at him. What about it? Levi seemed suddenly nervous, his usual confidence faltering. I know it hasn't been that long, and I know we still have things to work through, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life than I am about you. Elena's heart began to race. Levi, I'm not proposing, he said quickly. Not yet. That would be rushing things. But I want you to know that's where I'm heading. If that's something you might want too. It is, Elena said softly. Someday, when we're both ready. Levi's smile was radiant. Someday, he agreed, sealing the promise with a gentle kiss. The next morning, Elena woke early. Levi was still asleep, his face peaceful in repose. She slipped quietly from the bed, pulled on her clothes, and headed to the stable. She wanted to check on Storm before breakfast, maybe try again with the bridle he'd resisted yesterday. The farmyard was quiet in the dawn light, dew glistening on the grass. Elena took a deep breath of the clean country air, marveling at how much her life had changed in just a few months. From the suffocating fear of life with Jake to this. Open. Spaces, honest work, and love without conditions. As she approached the stable, she noticed the door was slightly ajar. Had Levi come out earlier and forgotten to close it properly? Or maybe Mike had already started the morning chores. Hello? She called, pushing the door wider. Mike? Is that you? No answer came from the shadowy interior. Unease prickled along Elena's spine. Something felt wrong. She stepped inside cautiously. The horses were restless, moving in their stalls, nickering anxiously. Elena reached for the light switch, but before her fingers found it, a hand clamped over her mouth from behind. Missed me? Jake's voice hissed in her ear. Elena struggled, but his grip was iron-strong, his arm like a vice around her waist. Stop fighting, he ordered. I'm not going to hurt you, I just want to talk. He removed his hand from her mouth, but kept his arm around her, pinning her against him. How did you get in here? Elena gasped. Farms aren't exactly fortresses, Jake said dismissively. No alarms, no cameras, just a simple lock. What do you want? Jake turned her to face him, his hands gripping her upper arms. In the dim light, filtering through the stable windows, his face looked haggard, his usual polished appearance replaced by stubbled cheeks and bloodshot eyes. I want what's mine, he said. You, my reputation, my dignity. Elena shook her head. I was never yours. Jake, not really. 5 years, Jake said, his fingers digging painfully into her arms. 5 years I gave you everything. And you repay me by running away, by making me look like a fool? You hurt me, Elena said simply. Over and over. I had to leave. I loved you, Jake shouted, making the horses whinny nervously in their stalls. Everything I did was for your own good, to make you better. There was nothing wrong with me, Elena said, a realization that had taken her years to reach. The only thing wrong in my life was you. Jake's face contorted with rage. He raised his hand as if to strike her, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, he dragged her toward the stable door. We're leaving, he announced. Right now. I have a car waiting. No, Elena said, digging in her heels. I'm not going anywhere with you. Jake's laugh was ugly. You don't have a choice, unless you want your precious farm to burn to the ground. Elena's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Jake pulled a lighter from his pocket. flicking it to produce a flame. Barns burn. So easily. All that dry hay, those wooden beams, and look. He gestured to a corner where Elena could see several gas cans stacked. I came prepared. You're insane, Elena whispered, horrified. No, Jake said, his voice eerily calm now. I'm determined. You have a choice, Elena. Come with me now, or watch everything you love go up in flames. Elena's mind raced. The horses. The farm. Levi. If fire took hold in the stable, it could spread to the house, the fields. Everything Levi had worked for, everything he had left of his family's legacy, gone. Okay, she said, her voice shaking. I'll go with you. Just put that away, please. Jake smiled, triumphant. I knew you'd see reason. He pocketed the lighter but maintained his grip on her arm as he led her toward the stable door. Wait, Helena said desperately, playing for time. Let me leave a note for Levi so he doesn't worry, or call the sheriff. Jake hesitated, then nodded. Fine. Make it quick, and I'll read it before you leave it. He released her arm, and Elena moved to the small desk in the corner where feed schedules and veterinary records were kept. With trembling hands, she found a pencil and a scrap of paper. Levi, she wrote, Jake is making me leave. He threatened to burn down the stable if I didn't go with him. Get everyone to safety. I love you. She started to fold the note, but Jake snatched it from her hands. As he read it, his face darkened with fury. You think I'm stupid? He snarled, tearing the note to pieces. That's it. No more chances. He grabbed Elena's arm again, dragging her toward the door with such force that she stumbled, crying out in pain. From one of the stalls came a frantic whinny, followed by the sound of powerful hooves kicking against wood. Storm, the stallion, had recognized Elena's distress. Shut up! Jake shouted at the horse, yanking Elena harder. Storm's response was a renewed assault on his stall door, the wood splintering under the force of his hooves. Stop it! Jake yelled, his composure cracking. Make it stop, Elena. I can't, Elena said, a plan forming in her mind. He's wild, unpredictable. That's why they keep him separate from the other horses. As if on cue, Storm kicked again, this time breaking through the lower half of his stall door. Jake backed away, dragging Elena with him. What the hell kind of place is this, keeping a dangerous animal like that? He demanded. I told you, he's wild, Elena repeated. No one can handle him except me. And sometimes Levi. Jake glanced nervously at the stall where Storm was now pushing his head through the broken section of door, dark eyes rolling, nostrils flared. Call him off, Jake ordered. I can't, Elena said again. He's not trained like that. He only responds to gentleness, to patience. Jake's grip on her arm tightened painfully. Then we're leaving now. He pulled her toward the door, but Elena resisted with all her strength. Storm, she called. Storm, help! The stallion's response was immediate and terrifying. With a final, powerful kick, he shattered what remained of his stall door and burst into the stable aisle, his massive body blocking the path to the exit. Jake froze, his face pale with fear. Get that thing away from me, he hissed. Let me go, Elena countered. Let me go and I'll calm him down. For a moment, Jake seemed to consider it. Then his expression hardened. No, we're going out the back way. He began backing up, pulling Elena with him toward the rear exit of the stable. Storm followed, his head low, ears pinned back, a posture Elena recognized as threatening. Storm, easy, she called, not wanting the horse to get hurt if Jake decided to use the lighter again. Easy, boy. The stallion hesitated, responding to her voice, but still clearly agitated. Jake used the moment to increase their pace, nearly at the back door now. Elena, Levi's voice rang out from the main entrance of the stable. Jake whirled around, keeping Elena in front of him like a shield. Stay back, he warned as Levi appeared in the doorway, or I swear I'll hurt her. Levi stopped, his eyes taking in the scene. Elena in Jake's grip, Storm free from his stall and clearly agitated, the gas cans in the corner. Let her go, Jake, Levi said, his voice calm despite the fear Elena could see in his eyes. You're only making things worse for yourself. Worse. Jake laughed bitterly. How could things be worse? She ruined everything. My reputation, my standing with my family, my business relationships, all because she couldn't appreciate what she had. She's not a possession, Levi said. She's a person with the right to choose her own life. She chose me first, Jake insisted. 5 years. 5 years I invested in making her who she is. And who is that? Levi asked. Someone afraid? Someone who flinches at loud noises? Someone who had to run away in the night because you hurt her so badly? Jake's face flushed with anger. You know nothing about us. Nothing. As he shouted, his grip on Elena loosened slightly. It was the opportunity she'd been waiting for. With all her strength, she drove her elbow back into Jake's stomach. He doubled over, gasping, and Elena broke free, running toward Levi. But Jake recovered quickly, lunging after her with a roar of rage. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Storm, already agitated by the shouting and tension, charged forward at Jake's sudden movement. The stallion's powerful body slammed into Jake, sending him crashing into the wall. Jake slumped to the ground, dazed but conscious. Storm reared up, hooves pawing the air dangerously close to Jake's head. Storm, no, Elena cried, fearing what would happen if those hooves connected with Jake's skull. To everyone's surprise, the stallion immediately dropped back to all fours, snorting but no longer threatening. He backed away from Jake, moving to stand protectively, near Elena and Levi. Jake struggled to his feet, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead where he'd hit the wall. He looked from Elena to Levi to the horse, his face a mask of hatred. This isn't over, he spat. Yes, it is, came a new voice. Sheriff Martinez stood in the doorway, her gun drawn and pointed at Jake. Hands where I can see them, Reynolds. Jake froze, then slowly raised his hands. This isn't what it looks like, he began. Save it, the sheriff cut him off. I heard everything. Breaking and entering, kidnapping, threats of arson. That's a lot of felonies before breakfast. 2 deputies appeared behind her, moving forward to handcuff Jake. You can't prove anything, Jake said, desperation creeping into his voice. It's my word against hers, and we all know her history of mental instability. Sheriff Martinez smiled, thinly. Actually, I can prove quite a bit. She held up a small recording device. Ms. Reyes called me as soon as she saw the stable door was open, left her phone on in her pocket the whole time, got everything you said about burning down the barn, forcing her to leave with you. Everything. Jake's face went slack with shock, then twisted with fury. You bitch, he snarled at Elena. You planned this. No, Elena said honestly. I was just scared, and for once, I asked for help instead of trying to handle everything alone. As the deputies led Jake away, Sheriff Martinez holstered her weapon. You okay? She asked Elena. Elena nodded, leaning into Levi's side as his arm came around her shoulders. I am now. Good thinking with the phone call, the sheriff said approvingly. Quick thinking under pressure. I almost didn't, Elena admitted. Old habits die hard. But then I remembered what Levi said about facing things together. Sheriff Martinez smiled. Smart man you've got there. She glanced at Storm, who stood nearby, calmer now but still alert. And that's one impressive horse. He protected her, Levi said, a note of wonder in his voice. Just like he knew she needed help. Animals sense things, the sheriff agreed. Now I need you both to come to the station to give statements. Then we can talk about pressing charges. As they walked out of the stable into the bright morning sunlight, Eleanor felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. Jake was in custody. He couldn't hurt her anymore. Couldn't threaten Levi or the farm. For the first time in years, she felt truly free. You saved yourself, you know, Levi said quietly as they followed the sheriff to her car. What do you mean? Elena asked. You could have gone with him, Levi pointed out, to protect the farm, the horses. But you fought back. You called for help. That took courage. Eleanor thought about this. I guess I did, didn't I? Levi smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. You did, and I'm so proud of you. At the sheriff's station, Eleanor and Levi gave detailed statements about what had happened. Sheriff Martinez informed them that Jake would be charged with multiple felonies, including kidnapping, breaking and entering, and attempted arson. Given the evidence we have, plus his prior behavior, she explained, he's looking at serious jail time. And with these charges on record, your restraining order will definitely be granted. What if he makes bail? Elena asked, the fear not entirely gone. Judge Harmon doesn't look kindly on men who threaten women, Sheriff Martinez said confidently. I'm betting he'll deny bail. especially given Mr. Reynolds's resources and flight risk. But even if he does get out temporarily, he'll have an ankle monitor, and we'll know if he comes anywhere near you or the farm. As they drove back to Ashfield later that day, Eleanor felt exhausted but lighter than she had in years. The nightmare. That had been her life with Jake was finally over. Justice was being served, and she had stood up for herself, fought back instead of running away. "What are you thinking?" Levi asked, glancing at her as he drove. "That I'm lucky," Elena said, "to have found you, to have found Ashfield, to have found myself again." Levi reached for her hand, entwining their fingers. "We're both lucky." Back at the farm, they checked on Storm first. The stallion was calm now, allowing himself to be led back to his repaired stall without resistance. Elena stroked his neck, murmuring praise and thanks for his protection. "He's something special," Levi observed. "Just like his trainer." Eleanor smiled. "We understand each other. Both of us had to learn to trust again." That evening, they sat on the porch of Levi's house, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. Elena leaned against Levi's side, his arm around her shoulders, a comfortable silence between them. "I've been thinking," Levi said after a while. "Hmm?" Elena murmured, content and drowsy after the emotional exhaustion of the day. "About what you said earlier, about being lucky to have found yourself again." Eleanor tilted her head to look at him. "What about it?" "I think that's the real love story here," Levi said thoughtfully. "Not just us finding each other, but you finding yourself, me finding myself. After Jamie died, I shut down, built walls, stopped living really. And then you came along with my own walls," Elena finished for him. "My own scars." Levi nodded, and somehow, instead of our walls keeping us apart, they created a space where we could both heal. Elena had considered this, thinking of how far they'd both come. Levi learning to open his heart again after loss. Her learning to trust after betrayal. "I like that," she said softly. "Our love story is a healing story." "Speaking of stories," Levi said, a hint of nervousness in his voice, "I've been working on something, a surprise, for you." "A surprise?" Elena repeated, intrigued. Levi stood, offering her his hand. "Come with me." He led her across the farmyard to a small building that had once been a tool shed, but had stood empty since Eleanor arrived. Now a fresh coat of paint brightened its exterior, and a new sign hung above the door. "Eleanor's studio." Levi. "What is this?" Elena asked, confused. "Open it," he encouraged. Inside, Elena found an artist's studio. Easels, canvases, paints and brushes arranged neatly on shelves and tables. Sunlight streamed through a new skylight, illuminating the space. "I don't understand," she said, turning to Levi. "What is all this?" "I found your sketchbook," Levi admitted. "In your cabin when I was looking for you after you left that night. I didn't mean to pry, but it fell open and... Elena, your drawings are incredible." Elena blushed. Drawing had been her passion once, before Jake had dismissed it as a waste of time, before she'd packed away her supplies and her dreams to focus on being who he wanted her to be. "They're just sketches," she said modestly. "They're beautiful," Levi insisted, "and I thought maybe you'd want to start again, now that you're free." Eleanor walked slowly around the studio, touching the brushes, the fresh canvases. Emotions welled up inside her, gratitude, joy, and something else. Something that felt like coming home to herself. "You did all this for me?" she asked, her voice thick with unshed tears. Levi nodded. "Mike and Carlos helped with the renovation. Sarah picked out some of the supplies." He looked suddenly uncertain. "If you don't like it, or if it's too much pressure..." Eleanor silenced him with a kiss, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, the real me. Always," Levi promised. That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of Levi's bedroom, Eleanor felt a peace she'd never known before. The fear that had been her constant companion for so long was finally gone. In its place was something new and precious. Hope. Hope for a future with Levi. Hope for rediscovering the parts of herself she'd buried to survive. "I love you," she said softly into the darkness. I love you too, Levi replied, his arms tightening around her. Always will. As Elena drifted towards sleep, she thought of Storm, the wild, fearful stallion who had learned to trust again, who had found his courage when it mattered most, just like her. 2 months later, Jake's trial began. Elena testified, her voice steady as she recounted years of abuse, the final confrontation at the stable, the threats and manipulation. Levi sat in the courtroom every day, his quiet strength supporting her through the ordeal. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, Elena felt the last chains of her past finally break away. Jake was sentenced to 8 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 5. It's really over, she said to Levi as they left the courthouse, for the last time. He can't hurt us anymore. It's over, Levi agreed. Then, with a smile that made her heart skip, he added, which means it's time for new beginnings. That evening, as the sun set over Ashfield Farm, Levi led Elena to the pond, Jamie's pond, now their special place. Storm grazed nearby, no longer. Confined to a paddock, his wild spirit now tempered with trust. Remember the first time we came here, Levi asked, taking both of Elena's hands in his. She nodded. You told me it was Jamie's favorite spot, that you hadn't brought anyone here since he died. This place was sacred to me, Levi said. A place of memory, of grief. But you changed that. You made it a place of hope again. He took a deep breath. Which is why it felt right to bring you here for this. To Elena's surprise, Levi dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. Elena Reyes, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion shining in his eyes. You came to Ashfield looking for work, for a place to sleep, for space to breathe. What you found, I hope, was a home, and a heart that will always be yours. Tears filled Elena's eyes as Levi reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I know we said someday, when we were both ready, he continued. I think we're ready now. You're the bravest, strongest, most beautiful soul I've ever known, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. He opened the box, revealing a simple but stunning ring. Will you marry me? Yes, Elena said without hesitation, joy bubbling up inside her like a spring. Yes, I'll marry you. As Levi slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to take her. In his arms, Elena felt the rightness of it all, from broken and afraid to whole and brave, from running away to standing firm, from a wild heart to a quiet love that would last a lifetime. Storm nickered softly from nearby as if giving his approval. And somewhere, Eleanor thought, Jamie was smiling too. 6 months had passed since Levi's proposal, and Ashfield Farm was transformed. Flowers bloomed in beds that had long been neglected, the fences gleamed with fresh paint, and colourful banners fluttered in the gentle spring breeze. Today was the day Elena and Levi would be married, right here on the land they both loved. Elena stood at the window of her studio, watching as the final preparations were made in the meadow where the ceremony would take place. Sarah and several women from town bustled about, arranging chairs and hanging garlands from the simple wooden arch Levi had built with his own hands. You're not supposed to be watching, came a teasing voice from the doorway. Elena turned to find Sarah's daughter, Maria, grinning at her. The teenager had become Elena's unofficial assistant in the studio over the past months, eager to learn about art, and just as eager to help with wedding preparations. I couldn't resist, Elena admitted. It looks beautiful. Wait until you see it with all the flowers, Maria said excitedly. Mum's putting the final touches on the bouquets now. Elena smiled, her heart full. When she'd first arrived at Ashfield, broken and afraid, she could never have imagined this day, a day when she would be surrounded by friends, preparing to marry a man who loved her completely, without conditions or control. Now come on, Maria insisted, tugging at Elena's hand. You need to start getting ready, and Mom will have my head. If you see Levi before the ceremony. Elena laughed, allowing herself to be led to the cabin that had been her first home at Ashfield. Though she now lived in Levi's house, their house, she'd kept the cabin as a retreat, a place to paint when she needed solitude. Today it would serve as her bridal suite. Inside, a simple white dress hung from a hook on the wall. Nothing elaborate or princess-like, just a flowing sundress with delicate lace trim, perfect for a spring wedding on a farm. Eleanor had chosen it herself with Sarah's enthusiastic approval. "No puffy sleeves or giant skirts for you," Sarah had declared when they went shopping. "You need something that lets you breathe, something that feels like you." As Maria helped her with her hair, weaving small wildflowers into the loose braid, Eleanor thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. The pain and fear of her years with Jake seemed distant now, like a bad dream that faded with the morning light. In their place were new memories, working alongside Levi in the fields, painting in her studio with the windows open to catch the country breeze riding storm across open pastures, his wild spirit now channeled into joyful partnership. "Earth to Elena," Maria said, waving a hand in front of her face. "Where'd you go just now?" Elena smiled. "Just thinking about how much has changed, how lucky I am." "It's not luck," Sarah said, entering with a bouquet of wildflowers tied with a simple ribbon. "It's what you deserve, what you both deserve." There was a knock at the door, and Mike's voice called out, "Everyone decent in there? The guests are all seated, and that boy of mine is about to wear a hole in the ground with his pacing." Eleanor's heart skipped. Levi was waiting for her, ready to join their lives forever. "We're ready," Sarah called back. She turned to Elena, her eyes suddenly misty. "You look beautiful, honey, absolutely beautiful." Elena hugged the older woman who had become like a mother to her. "Thank you for everything." Sarah brushed away a tear. "No time for that now. Let's get you married." Outside, the spring sun shone warmly on the gathering. It was a small wedding, just the farm workers and their families, a few townspeople who had become friends, Sheriff Martinez in a dress instead of her uniform, and a handful of Levi's relatives, who had traveled from neighboring states. Mike, looking uncomfortable but proud in his suit, waited to walk Elena down the aisle. After learning that Elena had no family to invite, he had gruffly offered to stand in. "If you want," he'd added, clearly prepared for rejection. Elena had accepted with tears in her eyes, touched by the gesture from the normally reserved foreman. "Ready?" Mike asked now, offering his arm. Elena nodded, taking a deep breath. "Ready." As they rounded the corner of the barn, the small gathering came into view. Chairs had been arranged in a semicircle around the wooden arch, which was now adorned with spring flowers and trailing greenery. But Elena's eyes went immediately to Levi. He stood tall and handsome in a dark suit, his usually tousled hair neatly combed, his eyes finding hers instantly. The love in his gaze was so intense, so unwavering, that Elena felt her breath catch. This was real. This was happening. As the simple melody of a guitar began, played by Carlos's teenage son, Elena and Mike started down the grassy aisle. With each step, Elena felt more certain. This was where she belonged. With this man, on this land, surrounded by people who had become family by choice rather than blood. When they reached the arch, Mike placed Elena's hand in Levi's with surprising tenderness. "Take care of each other," he said gruffly, then stepped back to take his seat. "You're beautiful," Levi whispered, his eyes never leaving hers. "So are you," Elena replied, making him smile. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They had written their own vows, and when it came time to speak them, Levi's voice rang clear and sure. "Elena," he began, "before you came to Ashfield, I was a man half alive, going through the motions, doing the work, but never really living. You changed that. You showed me that grief doesn't have to be the end of joy, that walls can come down, that hearts can heal." He squeezed her hands gently. "I promise to love you completely, to respect your strength and independence, and to be your partner in all things. I promise to build a life with you that's full of honesty, trust, and the freedom to be exactly who we are. And I promise to remind you every day that you are worthy of love, the real kind, the kind that lifts you up instead of tearing you down." Tears blurred Elena's vision as she began her own vows. "Levi, I came to Ashfield looking for a hiding place. What I found instead was a home, and you, a man who saw me, really saw me, when I was trying so hard to be invisible." She took a steadying breath. "I promise to love you with my whole heart, to trust in our partnership even when times are hard, and to never take for granted the gift of being truly seen and accepted. I promise to stand beside you through whatever life brings, to face it together instead of running away. And I promise to remember every day that love isn't about control or fear. It's about freedom and joy and building something beautiful together. As they exchanged rings, simple bands that matched the simplicity of their ceremony, Elena felt a sense of rightness settle deep in her soul. This was what love was supposed to be. Not the twisted version Jake had offered, but this, two people choosing each other, day after day, with eyes wide open. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "Levi, you may kiss. Your bride." The small gathering erupted in cheers as Levi pulled Elena into his arms, sealing their vows with a kiss that promised a lifetime of love. The celebration afterward was as warm and unpretentious as the ceremony. Tables set up under the old oak trees, homemade food prepared by Sarah and the other women, music provided by local musicians who were friends of Carlos. Children ran and played, dogs roamed between the tables hoping for scraps, and laughter filled the air. "Mrs. Hart," Levi murmured in Elena's ear as they shared their first dance. "How does it feel?" "Perfect," Elena replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "Absolutely perfect." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the festivities, a commotion near the paddock caught everyone's attention. Storm, who had been restlessly pacing all day, had somehow managed to open his gate and was trotting purposefully toward the celebration. Several guests gasped, moving out of the way of the large stallion, but Elena just smiled, stepping away from Levi to meet her four-legged friend. "Hey, boy," she said softly as Storm reached her. "Did you think we forgot to invite you?" The horse nickered gently, pushing his nose against her hand in a gesture that had become familiar over the months. Elena stroked his neck, murmuring soothingly. "I think he wanted to give us a wedding gift," Levi said, approaching slowly. Though Storm now tolerated Levi's presence, he was still primarily Elena's horse, still wary of most others. To everyone's surprise, Storm allowed Levi to come close, even lowering his head slightly, as if in acknowledgement. "What do you say, Elena?" Levi asked with a twinkle in his eye. "Want to show our guests what you two have been working on?" Elena grinned. For months, she had been gently training Storm, building on their bond of trust until finally, just weeks ago, he had allowed her on his back for the first time. It was a breakthrough that had brought tears to Levi's eyes. The wild stallion, once deemed unrideable, accepting Elena as his partner. "You sure?" she asked, glancing down at her wedding dress. "I've never been more sure of anything," Levi replied. "Except marrying you, of course." With a laugh, Elena gathered her skirts in one hand and, with Levi's help, swung onto Storm's bare back. The stallion stood perfectly still, as if understanding the importance of the moment. "Ready, boy?" Elena whispered, leaning forward to stroke his neck. With a soft command, she urged Storm forward. He responded immediately, moving from a walk to a trot, circling the open area as wedding guests watched in awe. Then, with a whoop of joy, Elena gave him his head, and Storm broke into a gallop, running the perimeter of the meadow with Elena balanced gracefully on his back, her white dress billowing behind her like wings. "Now that," Sheriff Martinez said to Levi as they watched, "is what freedom looks like." Levi nodded, his heart so full he thought it might burst. "She tamed the wild one," he said softly. "Both of them." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, Storm returned to where Levi waited, slowing to a gentle walk. Elena's face was flushed with joy, her eyes bright. "Show off," Levi teased as he helped her down. "You love it," she replied, breathless from the ride. "I love you," he corrected, pulling her close. The wedding guests had begun to disperse, carrying leftovers and memories back to their homes. Sarah shooed Elena and Levi away when they tried to help with cleanup. "Not today," she insisted. "Today you two have more important things to do." Hand in hand, they walked back to their house, the farmhouse that had once felt too empty to Levi, too full of ghosts. Now it was alive with new memories, new possibilities. On the mantel, Jamie's photograph still held a place of honor, but it was now surrounded by other pictures. Elena and Levi at the county fair, Elena with Storm, the whole farm crew at the harvest festival. "Happy?" Levi asked as they stood on the porch. watching the first stars appear in the deepening blue of the sky. More than I ever thought possible, Elena replied honestly. They had decided against a fancy honeymoon. Neither wanted to leave the farm for long, and besides, as Levi had pointed out, they had everything they needed right here. Instead, they would take a few quiet days to themselves, exploring nearby hiking trails and picnicking by the pond. That night, as they lay together in the bedroom that was now theirs, moonlight spilling through the curtains, Eleanor thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From fear to courage, from isolation to connection. From hiding to being fully, completely seen. "What are you thinking about?" Levi asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "About stories," Elena said. "About how I thought mine was over when I left the city. But it was just beginning." Levi smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Our story," he corrected gently, "and it's just getting started." 1 year later, Elena stood at the easel in her studio, adding final touches to her latest painting. It showed a woman riding a black horse across an open field, her face turned toward a distant farmhouse where a man waited on the porch. The sky in the painting was a riot of colors, sunset oranges and purples giving way to the first stars of evening. "That's my favorite one yet," came Levi's voice from the doorway. Elena smiled without turning. "You say that about all of them, because they keep getting better," Levi replied, crossing the room to wrap his arms around her from behind, his hands coming to rest gently on the small swell of her belly. "How are you feeling?" "Good," Elena said, leaning back against him. "The morning sickness seems to be fading." They had discovered the pregnancy 2 months ago, a surprise that had filled them both with equal parts joy and trepidation. For Elena, the idea of bringing a child into the world stirred old fears. What if she wasn't ready? What if she made mistakes? What if she couldn't protect them from all the hurts of the world? But Levi, with his quiet strength and unwavering faith in her, had helped her see the truth. No one was ever completely ready for parenthood. Everyone made mistakes, and the best protection they could offer a child was love. Real love, the kind that allowed for growth and independence alongside security and care. "I brought you something," Levi said, reaching into his pocket. He handed her a small, smooth stone polished by water and time. It was ordinary at first glance, but when Eleanor turned it in her hand, she saw veins of crystal running through it, catching the light. "I found it by the pond," Levi explained. "It reminded me of you." Elena raised an eyebrow. "I remind you of a rock?" Levi laughed. "A stone that looks plain until you really see it. Then you realize it's extraordinary, strong, enough to withstand tremendous pressure, beautiful in ways that aren't obvious at first glance." "Smooth talker," Elena teased, though she was touched by the gesture. It was so like Levi to find meaning in simple things, to see beauty where others might not look. She placed the stone on her work table, where it joined other treasures Levi had brought her over the months. A perfect feather, an unusually shaped leaf, a tiny wildflower pressed between glass. Small gifts that spoke of his attention, his way of seeing the world with wonder. "Sheriff, Martinez called," Levi said, his tone shifting slightly. "She wanted to let us know that Jake's appeal was denied. The conviction stands." Elena nodded, absorbing the news. After the wedding, she had tried to put Jake out of her mind completely, to focus on the life she and Levi were building, but the shadow of his presence had lingered, especially when they'd learned he was filing appeals from prison, claiming procedural errors in his trial. "So that's it then," she said. "Really over." "Really over," Levi confirmed. "He'll serve his full sentence." Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. One more chain broken, one more ghost laid to rest. "Come on," Levi said, taking her hand. "Sarah's holding dinner for us, and you know how she gets when the food gets cold." They walked across the farmyard toward the main house, where Sarah still cooked for the whole crew most evenings. It had become a tradition, the farm family gathering around the big table, sharing the day's stories, planning the work ahead. As they passed the paddock, Storm trotted over to the fence, his ears pricked forward in greeting. He was a different horse now from the wild, fearful stallion Elena had first encountered. Still spirited, still proud, but with a new confidence that came from trust and partnership. "Hey, handsome," Elena called, stopping to stroke his velvety muzzle. Miss me? Today? Storm nickered softly, pushing against her hand. Levi reached out to pat the horse's neck, a gesture that would have been unthinkable in the early days. He's like a different animal, Mike commented, joining them at the fence. The foreman had finally gotten comfortable around Storm, though he still preferred to admire the stallion from a distance. Never thought I'd see the day. He just needed someone to believe in him, Eleanor said. Someone who wouldn't give up on him. Mike nodded, his weathered face softening. Sounds familiar. Eleanor smiled, knowing he was referring to her and Levi's story as much as Storm's. It was true. Belief and persistence had transformed all their lives. Levi had believed in her when she could barely believe in herself. She had believed in Storm when everyone else saw only danger. And together, they had built something beautiful from the broken pieces of their pasts. At dinner, surrounded by the people who had become family, Elena looked around the table with a full heart. Sarah dishing out second helpings and fussing over everyone like a mother hen. Mike, gruff but kind, finally allowing himself to smile more often. Carlos and Luis, arguing good-naturedly about baseball while their wives rolled their eyes. And Levi, watching her with those steady eyes that had seen her at her worst and loved her anyway. This was home. Not the place, though Ashfield's rolling. Pastures and quiet beauty had indeed become home to her. But these people, this connection, this belonging, that was the real home she had found. Later that night, as they sat on the porch swing watching fireflies dance in the twilight, Levi pulled Elena close against the evening chill. I was thinking, he said, his voice thoughtful. About names, Elena smiled, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. Already? We've got months to decide. I know, Levi said. But I was thinking, if it's a boy, maybe James. He paused. After Jamie. Emotion welled in Elena's throat. I think that's perfect. And if it's a girl, Levi continued, maybe Faith. Faith? Elena repeated, considering it. Levi nodded. Because that's what brought us here. Faith in each other. Faith that there could be something better than what we'd known before. Faith, Elena said again, testing the name on her tongue. I like it. They sat in comfortable silence, rocking gently as the stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky. From the distance came the soft whinny of a horse, Storm calling to the mare in the next paddock. A year ago today, Levi said suddenly, we got married under that oak tree. Elena smiled at the memory. Best day of my life. Mine too, Levi agreed. Though the day you rode into Ashfield comes in a close second. Even though I was a mess, Elena asked, jumpy, defensive, ready to run at the first sign of trouble? Especially because of that, Levi said, his voice warm with love. Because it meant you were brave enough to try again, to look for something better even when you were scared. He placed his hand over hers where it rested on her belly. And now look at us, he said softly, building a family, building a future. Elena leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. The future stretched before them, unknown, unpredictable, but full of possibility. There would be challenges, she knew. Parenthood would bring new fears, new vulnerabilities. The farm would face good years and bad. Life would test them, as it tested everyone. But they would face it together, with honesty instead of secrets, with partnership instead of control, with the quiet strength that came from knowing they were loved completely, without conditions. I love you, Levi Hart, Eleanor said, the words simple but profound in their truth. I love you too, Elena Hart, he replied. Always have, always will. As the moon rose over Ashfield Farm, casting silver light over the fields and barns, Eleanor thought of the two broken people who had found each other here, the grieving brother and the battered soul, both trying to outrun their pasts, both afraid to trust again. And now, a year into their marriage, with a child growing beneath her heart, Eleanor knew they had built something rare and precious. Not perfect, nothing in life was perfect, but real. A love that had room for mistakes and growth, for independence alongside intimacy, for wildness and quiet both, the wild one and the quiet heart, finding their way home together. In the paddock, Storm settled for the night, no longer pacing restlessly as he once had. In the farmhouse, Jamie's photograph watched over them, a reminder of love that transcended loss. And in Elena's studio, a new painting waited on the easel, a family portrait not yet finished but already filled with hope. This was their story. Not an ending, but a beginning that renewed itself with each sunrise, each choice to love, each moment of courage in the face of fear, and it was beautiful.